Hi there, it's Jeff. I've recently just finished another valuable workshop jig to add to my collection, and this one is an adjustable router jig. It's to suit your handheld trimmers like this, and basically it can be adjusted to do cutouts in your projects, squares and rectangles to different sizes. So sit back and enjoy this video, and I'll talk you through and how you can make this jig at home with some basic materials and how it works. Okay, before we begin, I'm just going to talk you through a few things with this project, like the materials and the router. Firstly, I've made this jig to suit these handheld trimmers. It doesn't matter what brand it is. And I've made it to suit a 6mm straight cutter. Now, you can make it to suit a wider one if you like, but the majority of this work that I'm going to be doing with this is going to be to do the straight cut. So that's if you want to do a cutout out of your project, or if you did want to do a little bit trench or something like that, you still get away with this, but then you can adjust it again to use a wider one. So basically, straight cutter for this project. Now the materials I've used is just some offcuts and things that I had laying around in the workshop. These top rails here I've used MDF. It's just a white satin MDF. It's got like a melamine skin on it, and I've edged the two sides on it. I've bought some T-track. I bought 2 lengths of 1200mm or 4-foot lengths, and I've cut them in half. So these rails that you see on here, they're roughly around about 600mm. I've got some little knobs here. This is going to help when you are moving your jig and adjusting it. And the rest of it is MDF, just 6mm or 1/4" MDF, a couple of nuts and bolts. And I've also added on my one underneath a dovetail slot to suit your match fit clamps, or micro jig match fit clamps. That's just an optional feature that you can do. It might just help sometimes. I've just thought if I've got to clamp this down, I will try and use this on like the corner of your bench so you can get a couple of access points to clamp it, but just in case, that's optional. And that's basically it. It's a low cost little budget jig, but the things that this is going to do is going to be a lot easier for me to handle with this trimmer instead of setting up bits of strips of offcut when you want to clamp down and do a trench or some sort of router feature in your project. Alright, so to begin with, we're going to make these rails and the MDF strips underneath. So let's get started. Okay, to start off with here, I'm just cutting my rails out of the 18mm MDF satin. And like I said, these are around about 600mm in length, and around about 100mm in width that I'm cutting in here, which or 4 inches. That is optional. You can do that to a wider width or a little bit narrow if you really wanted to, but I just gave myself plenty of room, cutting it 100mm because I've got the track going in it as well. So just cutting these up to width now, and then I'll be taking it through the next stage of doing the trench for the T-track. Now the T-track is around about 19mm in width, or somewhere around 3/4 inch, and I'm just going to be running some passes through underneath there with the table, using the table saw, and I'll be moving the fence over in 3mm or 1/8 increments till I get to the 19mm width of what I need for the T-track to slip into. And I've adjusted the depth of that blade, obviously, to suit that track which was around about 10 millimeters or 3/8 of an inch. Next here, after I've finished doing that trench for the T-track, I'm edging both sides of this rail just to seal it and just to make it a little bit more durable, because remember that the edge of your router is going to be running along this as a guide. To hold this piece down while I'm working on it, you'll see I'm using a custom-made vacuum clamp, which you can see in one of my other YouTube videos if you're interested on how I made this and how handy it is actually in the workshop. Next, I've got some 6mm or 1/4 inch raw MDF, and these are going to be the strips that go underneath those guide rails, and the actual router will sit on top of this and run along it. I've made this MDF strips a little bit wider than what I actually need, and they will get trimmed with the router itself later on, as you can see. And I'm just pre-drilling some holes underneath, which will help me to screw this on to the bottom of those guide rails. The next step here is to screw and attach that MDF strip underneath your guides, and you can see with my combination square, I actually did a test piece first on a bit of scrap so I could get the exact measurement and then use it as a guide and then set my combination square up, and you'll see me just clamping this on and just offering that combination square up to on the end there, and just making sure it's the measurement that I want first and then screwing it down. Okay, here you're going to put your 6mm straight cut router bit in, set up your guides one by one, and you're using your trimmer, trimming off that excess material because I made a little bit oversized, and this is basically setting it to 0. This would be a 0 clearance to suit that 6mm cutter. And you want to do this in a few passes. You don't want to do it in just one pass because it's too much load for the trimmer and for that cutter. So do it in about 2 to 3 passes, just adjusting the depth as you go along. And in this process here, you can see in the video, I've got a Perspex base on the bottom of that trimmer. I ended up doing this process again without that base, just using the original Makita round base on it, just so it's a little bit more accurate and more centered. Next process here, I'm just running that dovetail slot underneath for the match fit micro jig clamps, which I mentioned is optional. You don't have to do this process. And in the next step here, I'm just screwing down the T-track. Next, I'm going to be making the top brackets. These are just out of the MDF as well. And these are going to interlink all the guide rails together. So there's 3 holes that you need to make along here. I've just done them in the center. They're around about 1/4 inch or 6mm. And they are to suit the T-slot bolts that go through there, 1/4 inch as well, actually. So they're just to suit that. This next process here, I've just got a little bit of aluminium flat bar, and I've just got some that suit the inside of that T-track. I've just done some measurements on it. I've made them around about 20 millimeters, and they are to accommodate a 6mm bolt that I'll be bolting from the top down. You can actually buy these little tabs already made online, like eBay or Amazon and that, but I just made my own here. So I'm just drilling them. I'm going to be tapping a 6mm thread through it as well to suit my little bolts. But you, like I said, you can actually buy these if you want to, or you can find nuts that actually fit inside the T-track as an option as well. Next, it's time to fit everything together. You just start with from one side and work your way to the next. Just a matter of attaching the bracket, sliding that little locking tab through onto your T-track, and fixing it into place. Okay, to demonstrate how this works, I've got a piece of melamine here on the bottom, got my jig on top, and I've got a piece of offcut MDF, 3mm, and I want to do a cutout in my MDF this size, okay? Now you don't have to have this, you could just actually draw it with a pencil on your piece of board and maneuver the jig around it. But basically you're just going to line up the edges of your jig here to whatever size you want. So if you have something like this, or you do have a piece that you want to copy, even better. So what I'm going to do is put this into the base. All right, and I'm just going to maneuver the jig to suit this. Okay, so once I'm happy and I've got my template here and it sits snugly inside my guides, just going to remove that. And you would line this up wherever you wanted it on your board, obviously. Now I'm just going to position this into place, and I'm just going to clamp this down. On this side I can use these match fit clamps. If you don't have that, you can actually use clip clamps. You can actually place them there as well. Okay, I just want to point out here, I couldn't use my guard with the vacuum attachment because it would hit the side brackets, so I had to remove that, but I did set up my dust extraction hose there, which tried to help with a little bit of the dust. And just running that trimmer through now with the 6mm cutter right round. And you can see I took off that Perspex base and just used the original Makita base there, so you can actually rotate it around. And you'll see that I did this also because it was around about 16 millimeters in material, the melamine that I was trimming. I did this in a number of passes, just moving that trimmer cutter into the material around about 3 or 4 millimeters at a time because it was thick. As you can see, you're left with a nice clean cutout that's to suit your template or your markings, and you adjust your jig to suit that, your outlines. What I'm going to show you in the next process here is another feature that you can use this for, and that's to do a rebate into that on the outside of that cutout now, and that could be to accommodate a cover. So I've got another piece of MDF here which is slightly bigger, and I'm just going to put some markings on the outside there where I want that rebate to end. And then again I'm just going to adjust my jig to suit those markings and use the same cutter, but just go to the depth of that 6mm MDF cover. So that cover ends up sitting inside there nice and snug and flush, which you'll see in the video. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe inspired you to make one of these jigs. I just thought it would be a great addition to the workshop. I've been doing a little bit of routering lately, and I've been missing something like this. Just a little pro tip as well, don't forget with these rails that all interlink with each other, you can separate them. And for example, if you just took one out, and you can use this like a singular one as a guide if you just wanted to do a trench or just one particular cut with your trimmer. That's the beauty of it. So it can be a little bit versatile, and of course, you know, you can make these at a longer length. This T-track comes, I know it definitely comes in 4 foot or 1200 mil lengths, so you could make a longer one if you really wanted to as well. But I just was using the 2 lengths that I had, cut them in half. But if I do find that I do need to do some sort of work like that, a longer one, I can actually add to this set and just make a couple of longer rails if needed. The other thing that was a little bit optional as well was fitting these match fit dovetail clamps, so you can actually clamp into the bench on the end as well. But like I said, that is optional. Apart from that, with this setup, a 6mm cutter, a trimmer, and yeah, happy days. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and like I said, inspired you to maybe make one of these yourself for your workshop to add to your jig collection. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and hopefully I'll see you in one of our next videos.